Your Excellencies, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Ed Gallagher, the President of the American Scandinavian Foundation, and I am delighted to welcome His Excellency Alar Karis, President of Estonia, and Mrs. Karis, Her Excellency Heidi Purgo, Minister of Culture of Estonia, and His Excellency Christian Prick, Ambassador of Estonia to the United States. Welcoming you all here to our headquarters, Scandinavia House, the Nordic Center in America. We are gathered today for a special screening of Arvo Pärt, Even If I Lose Everything, which is shown as part of the celebrations of Mr. Pärt that have been taking place at Carnegie Hall through the past week. Following the film, there will be a discussion by Peter Bouteneff, David Lang, and Paavo Järvi. This program has been organized by the Arvo Pärt Center as part of the series celebrating Arvo Pärt's Jubilee year. It is sponsored by the Institute of Sacred Hearts at St. Vladimir's Seminary, the Arvo Pärt Project at St. Vladimir's Seminary, and the Republic of Estonia Ministry of Culture. In addition, this program and all programs at Scandinavia House are supported by the Monica and Charles Heimbold Fund for Exhibitions and Programs. I'm especially pleased that we are able to present this program here at Scandinavia House, which this month celebrates its 25th anniversary and has welcomed more than 3 million visitors and presented over 3,000 programs since we opened exactly 25 years ago in October 2000. Over the years, Scandinavia House has remained committed to sharing the richness and diversity of Nordic culture, in keeping with the mission of the American Scandinavian Foundation. That mission, and I quote, is to build international cooperation, understanding, and friendship through cultural and educational exchange. This is a mission which is more important now than ever before, and certainly will live far beyond these days. Now I am honored to welcome to the podium His Excellency Alar Karis.
Dear friends of Estonia, dear admirers of Arvo Pärt's music. Every time I think of Arvo Pärt, every time I listen to his extraordinary music or have a privilege of meeting him, I feel with myself a wish to become a better person. I wish to be more humble, more grateful, more compassionate, and I also feel peace. Because through both his being and his music, Arvo Pärt reaches towards eternity, seeking comfort for the timeless struggles of human existence. That is what makes him so universal, so deeply understood all across the world. He builds bridges between people, no matter the language, faith, or homeland. And yet, in his music and his very presence, I sense something profoundly Estonian. The light of our land, its atmosphere, its sense, a spirit that connects him with our great composers, Veljo Tormis, Erkki Sven Tüür, Tõnu Kõrvits, and Pärt Uusberg. We are truly fortunate that within Pärt's own family there is also a remarkable filmmaker, Dorian Supin, who has managed through his lens to enter the composer's most personal and intimate world. In all three of Supin's films about Pärt, we feel true trust, sensitivity, and a genuine desire to understand. Through this we come to see Pärt's essence clearly, deeply, and from many sides. In this film, which we are about to see, Arvo Pärt says one beautiful thought, that among all the punctuation marks, there ought to be one more, a mark of remorse. We have the question mark and the ellipsis, but he says we also need a sign of regret and perhaps of compassion. And in his music, he has created one. If we recall the manuscript of his iconic piano piece, Fru Alina, we find at the turn point a small flower drawn by his wife's, Nora Pärt's, hand. That flower is a sign of regret or compassion. In our lives, in both speech and writing, perhaps we too should learn from Pärt's example. We should use more often the mark of remorse or the mark of compassion. And there is one more lovely thought that Arvo Pärt expresses so tenderly. Music is my friend, my comforter, my handkerchief for tears and sorrow, and my source for tears of joy. Pärt's music is all of this, for us as well. And perhaps through it, we can become better friends to one another. Thank you very much.
The silence is the best bit. His Excellency the President began by saying that an encounter with Arvo Pärt leaves him and all of us wanting to be better people. And he spoke about it humbling us and drawing us into simplicity. And so after a film like this, which really lets us into his life and into his world and his music, there's a feeling that one doesn't want to say anything too loud, too harsh. One doesn't want to tear that very fine, gossamer thin membrane that his music and his world represents. So I'm here with two very, very great maestros, and I think our duty for the next 20, 25 minutes will be just to together and on your behalf sort of let this film in a little bit and just say some words of reflection. Even If I Lose Everything is the title of the film, and we finally get to that quote at the end, and it inspires Arvo just to sort of giggle and say, I don't know. He wears all of this very, very lightly. And yet, as I was remarking with my neighbor over lunch today, his whole life has been about losing everything. And at the close of his life, I've had the joy of many conversations with him since 1990 up until this year. And as he fades in his cognitive world at the age of 90, he has lost something, and yet he's gained everything. He's gained his freedom, as Nora says. He says, you're free now. And I'll just, my last quote, my last thing right now before I invite my interlocutors to speak. This is from the second letter to the Corinthians in the New Testament. He says, we are as sorrowful, yet always rejoicing, as poor, yet making many rich, as having nothing, and yet possessing everything. It seems that part of this film seems to be conveying this about Arvo and his world and his music. But I want to just ask each of you for some first impressions having seen this film, maybe for the first time. I know maybe David for the first time. I don't know if you say so. Paavo, first impressions, just anything that comes to mind.
Well, first thing is that, as you said in the beginning, it feels unnecessary to talk after a film like this. You just want to sort of sit and think and enjoy the type of world that Arvo Pärt brings us to. It's a very nicely made film, by the way, and you can see it's made by somebody who he knew well. The other thing is that always sticks out and is a constant theme in that film is how human and how funny Arvo Pärt actually is, because we have often, and the world has this image of Arvo Pärt as a kind of a Baltic monk, yes. You know, somebody who sort of only walks in the presence of the Lord, you know. And the thing is that he's like us. He's like a human being. He's very funny. In fact, he's much funnier than even what you've seen in this film. I knew him somewhat, not very well, but well enough and for long enough. And he, you know, I was a small boy when he would come to our house, and for us it was always an Onu Arvo, you know, Uncle Arvo, and he's a very, very funny guy. And also, but why is that important? Is because if the one thing that brings us back to earth, and like he says, you know, make sure that you don't step into. It's good sometimes to step into the dog shit, you know, because it puts you back on the earth. It was his way of remaining totally grounded, and I think that's what we also hear in his music. If the music is somehow real and of flesh and blood, but it deals with issues that and the sphere of much higher layer of existence, but it's based and very strongly sort of grounded in real life.
What it takes to become a person who, when he steps in dog shit, doesn't think what I would think, which is shit, or, you know, but I must humble myself. This is where his disposition is. David.
I can imagine a lot more enjoyable ways to be humbled.
Yeah, right. By being a Baltic monk, for example.
Well, that's the image that I always had of him, and unfortunately, I never met Arvo Pärt. The last time I was in Estonia, he was not well, so every day I would try to arrange that I would get to meet him, and his people would call me in the morning and say, oh, he's not doing very well today. But I did get a call just a few months ago from Yannick Tulver, who said, oh, he's in a great mood. Can you be here tomorrow? But I was here, so I couldn't do it. I was surprised how funny he is, actually, and how human he is. And there's something that's a little shocking about that from someone who just knows him as a listener who loves the music, which is that it's not that I want to take that away from him, but it's the part of him that I don't need to get from the music. You know, the music, I want the Baltic monk. You know, I want the depth. I want to actually think that there's something that's so deep in it that I have to go deep in myself in order to understand it. So this was beautiful, and it was really fun, and I agree, it's a beautiful film. But it's also, it's a little bit off the topic from listening to the music for me.
Well, I think this is exactly the thing that we often miss is that we assume that if somebody is writing profound music, that they are somehow always profound, or somehow they have no other layer but this profound layer. And if you read Mozart's letters, he's talking about, sorry to mention that again, but the shit all the time. And his letters are so funny that you are on the floor laughing, how silly and how adolescent and how sometimes totally absurdly childish they are, and yet some of the greatest, most profound music is written by him. So I think that only people like this can write profound music. I don't think that the ones who are working only on that top level could actually write anything like this. They could write about that music, but I don't think they could write that music because they're too self-involved about being great.
Of course, all the writing that we have from Bach is just about money and complaining about his employers.
Well, Sibelius said that he would prefer to talk to bankers rather than musicians because musicians only talk about money.
We'll let that laugh develop. I've been around Arvo in the monastery where he used to love to visit. He has a house near the monastery, and it's the monastery where the elder Sophroni was the spiritual father. And of course, since then, Sophroni has been elevated to the sainthood in the church. Arvo has set Sophroni's words to music, and I knew Sophroni too, and he was the same way, someone who is capable of the absolute deepest spiritual revelation, but who was always somehow joyful and making other people laugh, just wearing it lightly.
But this is actually the gift that is, I think, the greatest gift of all, and it's making other people laugh. And laughing doesn't necessarily mean just silly ha-ha kind of laughing. It can also be very profound, and in fact joy and rapture in any way is a profound feeling. It's not necessarily only silly, but one layer of that is quite silly as well. And to be able to be a master of this genre, you need to have all layers and all levels functioning.
It seems a lot of humor of all kinds, profound and not profound. Much of it is based in irony and kind of like, this world is so strange, and a reaction to strangeness is either disorientation and depression or it's humor. It's making these juxtapositions between how strange and poor things are and my soul is, and yet how good it really is in some other sphere. It's kind of putting those together is what making it sound profound, but that's the root of so much humor. It makes us.
It's also a choice, I think, of how you express your feelings. Some people you're with, they're always complaining, always saying, "Oh, this is horrible. This is bad." The other people might be saying the same thing, but saying something ridiculous and say, look how beautiful that pile of dog shit is. Right. I mean, it's from which angle you actually look at it, or how you choose to express it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is to be taken 100% face value. There is a nuance. And that nuance sometimes is much more interesting to listen to, and actually has many more layers. And I think that funny people are the ones worth listening. Right now, we're living at a time. In many places, only the comedians have a freedom to actually say the truth. Otherwise, you'll be deported.
I think this humor is also very disarming. I think that the value of this humor is not to necessarily make you laugh, but to also lower your guard. And I think so much of the music is about the directness and the purity of the communication. And so I think that this is the same way. It's like, if I am this humble with you in my life, then you can accept the music as being that humble as well.
It's often said about Arvo's music that it is a kind of a bringing together of suffering and consolation, loss and hope. And many people, when they first hear his music, the first reaction is, it's a bit sad. you know. They hear minor key, and that kind of makes a lot of Western listeners think sad. And then they listen longer, and they say, but there's a whisper that sadness is not the last word, that there is hope. And then musicologists have kind of applied his tintinnabuli method to kind of show how that might work, you know. But however we analyze it, it seems his music is trying to express some of the same things humor is trying to express, which is, again, how sad things are, and yet how light they are at the same time.
You know, as a person who's mostly dealing with symphony orchestra, and Arvo Pärt is well known for or became famous really for the music that he wrote for choruses and small orchestras and small ensembles and so on, which is the second half of his output. And if you look at the early music, I mean, he was the bad boy of avant-garde in Soviet Union. I mean, he was somebody who was shocking. His first orchestral piece was called Necrologue. You know, imagine, and you know, in the Second Symphony, he writes rubber ducks and squeaky toys, and I remember coming from Cincinnati, where I was a music director at the time, recording the Second Symphony in Estonia, and they said we don't know where to get these rubber ducks. So I went to a pet store in Cincinnati and I bought the full suitcase full of all types of rubber ducks and little dog things, and they're all making different sounds, and this is what you hear on the recording. And then I left it and gave it to the orchestra and wrote it off as a donation of musical instruments.
Fantastic.
I wonder who has them.
I didn't know the conversation would go so quickly to rubber ducks, but you never know. Yeah.
So the point is that there is a lot of very, very shocking music and very hard-hitting music, and he wasn't always the Arvo Pärt that is portrayed in this film, and so there is so much transformation, and it's such a philosophical way of arriving to this point where you see this person sort of being able to see something through a prism of sort of a greater life experience, but it comes with actually going through all these steps, which in the beginning got him almost banned, you know, from Estonian music life or Soviet music life, and all the whole thing with emigration, and it's been a tough journey. So I think that what you see now is a certain arrival point, or a certain sort of wisdom that he's gained from all of this. It wasn't always like this.
I do think, though, that there was something really controversial about the political nature of making that kind of music, of making 12-tone music and making these loud, aggressive, kind of in-your-face things, which were, very much not acceptable in the world that he was in. But I also think when he started doing simple music, it also was that same kind of radical confrontation. It also was very much like, I'm going to do something which nobody else is doing, which is going to be, in a way, just as much putting my finger in your face as the other. And I think that I agree with you. I love those orchestra pieces. They're huge and unpredictable. But I just think that there's confrontation in all of this music.
Many people in the beginning who were sort of hardcore modernists, so to speak, were dismissing this music because they considered it too simple, the new style, up until the point where the world sort of accepted it, and then they said, yes, there is something to it, and they started imitating it.
for those, I don't know how many of us were fortunate enough to be in the hall on Thursday evening, but Paavo directed a career-spanning repertoire, which included Perpetuum mobile, but also Credo. It ended with Credo. And you spoke about how this early music was kind of shouting, and of course, at some points, Credo, I don't know if I've ever experienced such volume in a concert hall. The air was moving through the whole concert hall and striking our bodies, and by the end, you feel like that was a kind of a purifying air that moved so loudly. I'm being encouraged to begin to draw this to a close. I feel like I could speak with you for hours with great joy. But do you have any sort of closing thoughts, either of you, to offer that have come up? David?
Have fun.
Be careful when you walk out. There might be some. Look on the floor.
It's available. It's available.
It's already.
It was made in 2015. It's the third documentary by Dorian Supin. Yeah.
So you didn't have to come here today.
That's right. You wasted your time.
But I'm very glad you all did. And our speakers, thank you very much for illuminating. Peter Bouteneff, Paavo Järvi, and David Lang, thank you very much. Please stay in your seats. Please stay in your seats for the moment. Your Excellency, would you please join me up here? You're invited to a reception on the second floor, but please remain in your seats for the moment.